extensibility was at the core of the Poriscope development process. Not just extensibility, but the fact that it had to be easy to extend the analysis workflow that Poriscope ships with. And in fact, both of these aspects are possible and are covered thanks to Poriscope's plugin-based architecture. Every single time you are loading your raw data, you are finding events, you're writing events, you load these events back again, and even every time you switch between the different analysis steps, you are using plugins. So let's say, for instance, maybe your analysis pipeline is not supported by Poriscope, or maybe it is, but you want to use your own algorithm to fit the events. It is very likely that you can do this by just writing a couple lines of code. And I know it may be hard to believe, and I'll show you how you can do this, but once you see how it is very possible to do this and very easy, it may just be the reason why Poriscope becomes one of your favorite analysis tools. If you refer to the Poriscope documentation, and you can find the link for that in the description of this video, you'll see that there are two user manuals, user guide and plugin development. Plugin development is where you will go whenever you run into this question of, I want to customize my Poriscope experience, I want to customize my workflow. There are two types of plugins. So there's the data plugins, which are the ones that we use for loading the data, finding events, writing events, and applying filters. Whereas there are the front-end plugins, which are the analysis steps, because they're front-end because there's an interface that you're implementing. And regardless of which ones you're using, both of these plugins are based off something we call base classes. What base classes are, they are basically a blueprint. So for instance, if you're building a house, your house needs walls, your house needs a door, and these aspects are common among houses. All houses have walls and all houses have a ceiling and a door, but not all houses are the same color, not all houses have the same furniture, for instance. What these base classes do is that they implement the aspects that are common across the different types of plugins. So for instance, all of the readers share certain characteristics, and then the only things you have to implement are the color. What this means is the only things you have to implement are the things that are specific to what you want to do differently. So for your fitting algorithm, your event feeder implements everything that must be required for Poriscope to process your event feeder correctly, but then you will implement, of course, the details of your specific algorithm, because that's what you want to add to the workflow. Whenever you want to change aspects like how you load data, how you filter data, you'll use a data plugin. But if you're not happy, if you want to complement the workflow, so the steps, so the raw data, event analysis, metadata clustering, you want to add to it, you want to modify one of these steps, you want, after metadata, you maybe have an extra step you want to take and you are always taking, so you would like to have an interface to handle that, then you'll proceed and do a front-end plugin. The information, again, can be found here. Plugin development, you have information on how to get started, the system architecture, where to begin, and then details on front-end development and back-end development. And you also have access to all of the base classes. So when you're checking the back-end plugin development, it's gonna redirect you to check the meta event loader, the meta writer, and so on. There's also practical examples if you want to check that out, but it is really detailed. If you ever have even more in-depth questions, we encourage you to contact us, but please refer to the documentation as a whole first. It is really thorough, so once you go through it, you see the examples, you're actually going to see why it is so easy, so simple to add your own custom plugins and to customize your workflow using Poriscope. And the plugin-based architecture is not just amazing because it allows you to write your own plugin so that you can customize your analysis pipeline on the Poriscope application, but it is also pretty cool because it allows Poriscope to become a really powerful scripting engine. What this means is that all of Poriscope plugins, all of the plugins that make a Poriscope, can actually be used in standalone scripts. And this actually takes me back to what I was mentioning in part 1 during the installation, when I said how it was really important for Poriscope to be recognizable by your environment. So just make sure that the Python you install Poriscope with is the same Python you are writing your scripts with, because if that's the case, then you're able to do from Poriscope import whichever plugin it is that you'd like to import. So for instance, while the GUI is great for exploring data and working with experiments with up to 10 channels, if you need to do batch analysis on a larger number of experiments or are working with way more channels, then it probably is more efficient to write your own custom workflow scripts, and then you can engage with the interface for post-processing and visualizing the data. In any case, Poriscope allows you to really do whatever fits the best the kind of analysis you're performing. And in the documentation, you can find the scripting with Poriscope section, which has a lot of examples on how to go about it. So we encourage you to test this really good feature, because once again, it can render your analysis more efficient depending on how much data you are processing. There are some issues that users usually encounter because sometimes they go super fast through their workflow and keep clicking everywhere, or because they haven't used the application in a while, so there's steps that are missed. So before actually freaking out about an issue that you're running into, we recommend you to check the frequently asked questions sections. It can be found in the documentation, and take a look at that, see if your issue's there. But if it's not, then now we'll dive deeper into something we mentioned in part 1, which is navigating the log messages that Poriscope has to offer. But we will do this more in detail so that you can actually resolve all resolvable issues on your own, and if not, escalate it to their respective place. So if you remember, in part 1, we went through how to change your log level, meaning how to change what is getting recorded, what is getting logged in the background regarding your Poriscope activity. So now we're going to dive a bit deeper into what these messages mean, what's the difference, how you use these messages to solve any issues that you may run into, and when it is that you probably have to escalate this because there's something that is stopping you from making the most out of your Poriscope experience. So let's look into it. Using VS Code, just because I'm going to be Control-Fing some stuff and I want it to be clearer, and I feel like with VS Code, it's going to be easier to visualize. So we're going to open Poriscope. We're going to put it right here. And then we are going to check our log level. So it's info by default, but let's make it explicit. And then let's conduct our analysis pipeline, right? So you can see reader. We're gonna add a reader. What happened? Switch to page raw data view, meta class, subclass, chimera reader. That select input file. Okay. Oop. So I instantiated it, and then we can see, for instance, this is the name. Control F. There it is. So it's model updated, chimera reader, view updated, chimera reader, updating readers, chimera reader, collecting parameters. Then you have updating channels because we updated the channels. Let's see, I click 1. Selected items 1, selected items nothing, 3, 2. So you see, it's really walking us through every single time we enter an action, we go out of an action, what's happening. It's literally, you know how there is for subtitles in movies, you have subtitles and you have descriptive subtitles. It is like the descriptive subtitles of everything you're doing in Poriscope. So this could be read to someone if they did not have access to the UI, and they'll know what you're doing. So yeah, that is the info level. Now, the debug level. This is, as the name indicates, when you are running into an issue, you want to debug it, so you want to see way more details. So let's see the differences. So let's say we delete this. Oh, we didn't have any filters. We delete that. So for instance, now we're gonna add the same thing. Actually, let's clean the terminal just so it's clearer, and then Poriscope. Okay, so there it is. Raw data. Switch to page raw data view. Switch to page return. For instance, before we were not seeing this. Switch to page return on raw data view. Click return. Before we were just seeing. If we go back to info. Switch to page raw data view. That's it. We were not seeing what the functions return. But now that we are in debug, we are seeing return none, return none. What else? So camera reader, okay. Look, we're even seeing all of the details regarding the creation of the reader instance. So we have camera log files, .log. This is the value that we've selected, camera reader. Input file type is a string, .log, game to value. What is return? Return. Okay, so let's. What is return? So you see, it's not just the high level view of the steps, but actually more details into all the aspects, all the parameters that steps may entail. So for instance, maybe one day you are trying to log a camera file and then you are not able to do it. You're confused about why, but then you realize that this extension does not match the log extension that it should be. It's LOGG. So then you can see the issue. And then before you were not able to see this in the info level, but in debug level you can. So this is just an example. There's no reason why you should be playing with the extensions unless you're customizing your own plugin. But for instance, then if you were writing your own plugin, then why can I not load this new file extension that I have created a reader for? Maybe your extension is wrong. So the debug is going to help you identify those kind of things. And as you progress in the analysis tab, here is real straightforward. We are loading a reader, but it could get more into, you'll see, for instance, if you are running an event finder, you can see maybe the progress bar is stopping at a certain number. Is the analysis actually happening in the background? How much loading is the debugging registering? So those are aspects that debug can really help you understand. But because of the amount of detail that they provide, both debug and info levels can jeopardize performance. So unless you are actually running into issues or you're really curious about what's happening in the background, you should, if you keep it in warning or in error level, that's totally fine. So warning versus error, let's see that. If we repeat the whole thing again, you see, there's nothing. I literally just deleted a reader before we were getting a lot of information about it. Our plugins were getting updated, but now it's in warning and I got nothing. If I add a reader, same thing, there's nothing because nothing's wrong. There are not possible issues that may arise from this process. It's all good. For info and debug, I also want to mention that you are able to see some of those logs even more human readable in the login panel. You already knew that, but just something to point out. But yeah, going back to warning, because there's no warnings, there's nothing here getting logged. Same thing if we go to error. So there it is. And then delete that, nothing, because I didn't have any errors with that. Load this, nothing. So yeah, error and warning, they won't jeopardize, it won't take a toll on performance because, as you see, it's not constantly that you're getting errors and warnings. That'd be concerning. It may happen when you are developing your own plugin, but you'll be happy that it happens because you'll be able to fix the different issues. I want to mention that the good thing about error and warning levels is that you don't have to keep an eye for them in the terminal. You actually, as you have seen in part 2, even in part 3 at the beginning, I believe, every single time there's a warning or an error, it will also pop up in the UI, so you will be able to see it. You don't have to be concerned about, oh my god, I haven't checked my terminal, maybe I missed a warning. No, if there's the warning, you'll see the warning, trust me. So that's something good to keep in mind. And another thing about the logs is that technically the logs, you can read them. They are written text, so they are technically human readable, but they're many times very large and dense. The ones we have been seeing have been pretty straightforward, but sometimes it's like, it could be an issue with a Python package even. So sometimes they become really, really, really verbose. And it is completely valid to want to ask your favorite LLM with help on how to understand them. You can also use a Stack Overflow, copy the message and paste them on Google just to see what it means. Sometimes it's like known errors for them, not for us, because we're not familiar with all of the errors. So just like something to keep in mind when you are looking at your debug logs. And info level, debug level, quite verbose. So debug there. And if at some point there is an issue that, regardless of whether you are looking at the high-level message, because sometimes there's like high-level messages that we have written, so it's like, oh, no channels to read, right? But sometimes it's like messages that come based on like the try and catch that we have implemented. Sorry to get technical there. So there's messages that entail a lot of detail. Sometimes, even if you have tried to solve this, but you cannot solve, there's a point that you arrive and you're not able to solve this just by selecting the right channel or selecting the reader that corresponds to the finder, the writer that corresponds to the finder. If you realize it's not an issue you can solve by looking at the FAQ or by seeing like, oh, of course this is not working, my data has 0 seconds or something like that, then we are always looking forward to improve. We are really happy to make the user experience as well as just the analysis as efficient as it can be. So we encourage you to contact us so you can take copy all of your logs, save them into a text file, take a screenshot of the error, basically send us the error in a way that we can reproduce it just by looking at it, or send us even the steps you did. Okay, so I click here, then I click here, and then it didn't open, and then you show us what the login panel is showing you. We will really appreciate it. Keep in mind, so as long as we can reproduce it, then we can track it down and see what's not working and fix it. More details on how to contact us or how to upload your issue as a GitHub issue can be found in the description of this video. That wraps up part 3 of the Poriscope tutorial series, putting it all together. You've now been introduced to how powerful of a tool Poriscope can be if you take the time to understand its plugin-based architecture. Additionally, you now know the troubleshooting package that you need to help you during this customization process to support you while using Poriscope's 4-tab pipeline, or even to help us improve the Poriscope experience for everyone.